Joining us now is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. He serves on 3 Senate committees, including the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Select Committee on Intelligence, where he is the chairman. Chairman Cotton, welcome to This Week on Capitol Hill. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
All right. Before we get to the resolution, you chair the Senate Intelligence Committee. You've been very vocal about this. Your reaction to the capture and arrest of Nicolas Maduro?
Well, it was an exceptional operation conducted by our troops and our intelligence officers. Truly only the United States could have achieved such a flawless execution of a highly dangerous and risky mission without the loss of American life. It is a very good day for the United States, for Venezuela, and for the cause of stability, order, and prosperity in our own backyard. Venezuela is really unique in Latin America. Some countries don't have control of their whole territory. Cartels operate in that territory. Other countries tolerate the presence of these cartels. In Venezuela, the government was the drug cartel. It was in league with drug traffickers. That's why Nicolas Maduro was a U.S. indicted drug trafficker. Furthermore, Venezuela has turned into a crossroads and a playground for every American enemy around the world: China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, even Islamic terrorists like Hezbollah. And they were using Venezuelan territory to radiate threats out to the United States. So I think the president was right to act decisively after trying diplomacy and trying to let Maduro go into exile. Hundreds of Arkansans, thousands of Americans who have lost loved ones to drug addiction will now get a measure of justice. And we hope that Venezuela will see a new day. The early signs this week are encouraging from the interim authorities in Venezuela. There's a long way to go. But remember, this was once a stable, prosperous, pro-American country before Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro turned it into a virulent anti-American country. We want to return it to those roots. We want to have pro-American countries in our backyard.
So based on what you know, Senator, beyond the drug trafficking, which, as you've pointed out, affects families all across this country, was it also becoming a staging ground for potential terrorist activity and attacks on the United States, much like what we saw in Gaza with Israel?
Yes, Tony, without question. Again, that's why Iran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the shock troops for the Ayatollahs, even terrorists like Hezbollah were present in Venezuela. It's one thing for countries like Russia and China to have intelligence operatives masquerading as diplomats. That happens in a lot of countries around the world. It's another thing to have shock troops and terrorists on your territory, to traffic not just in drugs, but to traffic weapons as well, to get passports to allow them to travel freely throughout the Western Hemisphere. These were threats that were emanating from Venezuela, which, again, is not happening anywhere else throughout Latin America. So America is safer today, and Venezuela has the hope of a brighter future that will be pro-American because we had our brave troops and intelligence officers go in, apprehend Nicolas Maduro, and bring him to justice in the United States.
Senator Cotton, you mentioned Iran. I want to ask you about that in a moment with events unfolding there. It could be at a tipping point, but I want to ask you about the War Powers Act vote, procedural vote. It's moving toward a vote in the Senate, but you had 5 Republicans. Normally wouldn't pay much attention to this when the Democrats are the ones that are, doing all the blabbering. But you had 5 of your colleagues join with this among Republicans. Is this sending a message, or what's going on here?
Well, Tony, first off, you're right that as a practical matter, this will have no impact. Speaker Johnson doesn't have to bring it up in the House if we ultimately pass it in the Senate. And of course, President Trump would veto it, and it didn't pass with veto-proof majorities. The War Powers Act, though, is a Vietnam-era relic that allows usually the minority to get expedited and privileged resolutions to the floor when it disagrees with a president's foreign policy actions. You have a difference between those Democrats and the handful of Republicans who supported this resolution, though. They all agree that Maduro was an illegitimate communist dictator and a drug trafficker, and the world's a better place with him behind bars. The Democrats, though, want to eat their cake and have it too. They then say that Donald Trump was wrong to execute the operation that put him behind bars. The Republicans who voted for the resolution strongly support what President Trump did in Venezuela. They just have concerns about what's next in Venezuela. And they have somewhat different views than I do about the extent of presidential power under the Constitution and Congress's role in foreign policy and defense policy. I think those are genuinely heartfelt, convicted positions. I just respectfully disagree with them. But as a practical matter, this is not going to have any impact on what we're trying to accomplish in Venezuela.
Could it be sending that message, though, as you pointed out? There's concerns that we don't get stuck when people are talking about we're going to be running Venezuela. People are concerned because it's not been that long ago we were in Afghanistan.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences, of course, between Venezuela on the one hand and Afghanistan and Iraq on the other hand. Venezuela is a largely homogenous country from the standpoint of ethnicity and culture and religion, unlike Middle Eastern countries that are riven with factional, tribal, sectarian differences. Venezuela has a history of prosperity, stability, and representative government until Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro run the country. And of course, we don't have troops in Venezuela. President Trump has said he doesn't want to have any more troops in Venezuela. What we have in Venezuela, which we didn't have in those other countries, is extraordinary leverage because they are so dependent on black market oil revenue. And that revenue is not coming in right now because we have a naval blockade in place. That's one reason why I thought the War Powers Resolution was ill-advised, because it could be interpreted as requiring us to remove that blockade. But we've seized 500 of these so-called ghost tankers, not 500, 5 of them, just over the last week. And that means that Venezuela's government, really its entire society, will begin to seize up if they don't have access to that illicit oil revenue. What President Trump plans to do is to take the oil, to sell it on the open market at fair market value, and then use those revenues to help Venezuela return to stability, to pay salaries for their police officers, sanitation workers, firefighters, to get the electrical grid back up and running, ultimately to get their oil industry back up and running. So those are real significant differences between Venezuela and Latin America on the one hand, Iraq and Afghanistan, and the broader Middle East on the other hand.
45 seconds left, Senator Cotton. Iran. Is this more of the same unrest, or is there something significant happening there?
Well, we've seen these kind of protests over the years, most notably in 2009 when Barack Obama pretended they didn't even happen and the regime brutally put them down. It's a new day in Iran and America because President Trump has been very clear that he is, as he put it, locked and loaded if the Ayatollahs begin to massacre their own people who simply want to get out from underneath their theocratic thumb. And what we've seen is that they have not begun the mass slaughter or harassment of these protesters. We all wish them very well. We want to take any step we can to help them in their genuine yearning against the Ayatollahs for freedom and to return Iran, like we want to see Venezuela return to, a pro-American country that works with us, that doesn't work against us at every turn.
Well, we'll continue to watch that. Senator Tom Cotton, thanks for joining us.